So let's focus on how to market our dogs as individuals. I'm going to let Caitlin Quinn take it from here, and she's going to actually tell you, I promise, going to give you guys some marketing tips and tricks on how to market all your dogs that you can transfer to any dog in your shelter. So thank you guys, and here's Caitlin.
Thank you so much to Nikki and Animal Farm. My name is Caitlin Quinn, and I'm the Director of Operations for a national organization called HeartSpeak. And our mission is really to get more animals in shelters and rescues seen by more people who hopefully can adopt and interact with your mission through marketing. And so I have for you guys today some general marketing tips that I hope will really not only help your pit bull dogs shine, but also help all of your animals shine. So let's dive right in. The first thing I want to talk about is just why is marketing critical? And I think that may seem like a weird question to start with, but I think that while most of us have an awareness that marketing is something that we want to be doing or something that we need to put into our strategic plan, I think that sometimes it also sounds like something that is too slick, or that we don't have the resources for, or that we need to have an intense amount of training to execute really well. And what I would love for you to take away from this presentation and from some of HeartSpeak's resources are that you can execute marketing on no budget with very few resources, even if you're the only person doing this for your organization. And the reason that it's so critical is that we can be doing everything right behind the scenes at our shelter, but all of that good work goes to waste if no one knows that it's happening. So what I would like for you to do in the context of this presentation is consider that marketing is how we show the world and how we show the community what it is that we're doing, how we expose them to our mission, how we start to change hearts and minds in the community. And what I would love for you to think about in terms of what marketing really means for our field is connection. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I also want us to just consider that one of the reasons that marketing is so integral to any kind of life-saving plan, any kind of operational plan, is that ultimately it's our way of communicating on behalf of the animals, who sadly don't get to meet everyone and kind of market themselves without us doing that kind of introduction for them. It's our lucky kind of honor and responsibility to think about marketing in these contexts and more that we'll kind of touch on today. But what I really want to focus on, especially for the purposes of this presentation, are that we can really change the way that people think, not only about pit bull dogs and about the animals in our shelter, but the very way that they think about our organizations. And we have lots of opportunity through marketing to take back a little bit of control about the way that people think about our work. I know usually when I do this presentation with people in front of me that I can interact with, I ask the question of, how many of us feel like even our closest family members sometimes don't understand the work that we do. I feel like, the perceptions of animal welfare work fall into two categories of either we're rolling on the floor with kittens and puppies all day, or that there are sad or sometimes terrible things that happen to animals that we are on the front lines of. And we know that the truth is somewhere in the middle of those two things, right? That yes, we see difficult things. Yes, we are put in positions of having to make difficult choices. And yes, we do get to get friendly with super cute animals sometimes, but most importantly, there's a lot more nuance to the message. And I think that for us, I would love for us to think about marketing as the way that we kind of take control over some of those perceptions. So again, if we're thinking about marketing as connection, then we also get to think about marketing as storytelling. And I don't mean, I think storytelling gets thrown around a lot. And I don't want that to be an intimidating word either. But what I want you to think about it is giving access to the community to show off lots of different facets of what you're doing at your organization. So whether that is animal control or veterinary care or community resources that you have, or something simple like enrichment or volunteerism. I want you to think about all the different storytelling opportunities that you have, and really, again, to touch back on this idea that continued life-saving really is only sustained through this community support, and community support is what we get through marketing. So for today's purposes, we're going to talk about marketing as kind of this simple recipe. We're going to start with just kind of setting goals and planning message points. And then we get into the fun stuff of kind of being able to leverage those goals through imagery and photos and video, and also the language that we use. And finally, using digital marketing platforms because they're accessible to all of us. So one thing that you'll see in a lot of the materials that I have for you today are, kind of touch points on positivity and the fact that positive marketing has a real place for us, especially when we're, touching back on this idea of marketing pit bull dogs and really kind of being sure to market individual animals. A lot of this comes down to using inspiration, humor. I think authenticity is a really important part of this that we'll talk about. And here are the reasons why that I want you to kind of consider for a moment. We want to ultimately offer a true and very positive connection with the animals. I want to be super clear that that doesn't mean that we're going to sugarcoat everything, or that we're going to not be honest about certain situations, whether it's a difficult cruelty case or it is, challenges that individual animals have. But I do want us to ultimately lead with all of the amazing things that we have access to, and not always lead with the doom and gloom side of things, so to speak. I think it's also really important to consider that authenticity and positivity help deliver that message of respect, both for the people working in animal welfare and for the animals themselves. If you do feel like in your community your agency is kind of misunderstood or has been, like there's misinformation about your organization in the community, then this is also your opportunity through all kinds of marketing, but especially positive marketing, to really limit that opportunity for undeserved criticism. And I'm going to show you a couple ways that happens. But again, positivity does not mean that there's a lack of transparency, and I want to be really clear about that. So here's just a very simple example of the power of positivity. So in the photo on the left-hand side of the screen, we have, I think there's a lot of things happening with that photo. The fact that it's black and white, the fact that the puppy is behind bars, so to speak, all of that kind of leads to this perception that, shelters are equated with jail, or that there's sadness. We get kind of that Sarah McLachlan song playing in our minds. And I think that we have to recognize, no matter what our personal beliefs are, that the community often has this mythologized view of shelters because of what they have access to. And they don't have access to nearly the amount of information or resources that we do. And so it's really easy for them to go down that road of thinking shelter animals are damaged, pit bulls are scary. I'm not sure I want to adopt because I have all this kind of anxiety around that. Or how often do you hear people say, oh, I wish I could do what you do, but it would make me too sad. I could never do that, right? I think that's where we have this power, this control to take back a little bit and say, wait a second, of course there's difficult things, but look at all the amazing things and look at what we can offer to you as a community resource. So on the other side of the screen, I want us to consider how different this approach is. And obviously, this is a really well-designed marketing campaign, but I want you to zero in less on the aesthetics of this and more on the messaging around this, because this is something we can all do. So first and foremost, they feature a dog who looks like probably what a lot of their population looks like at the shelter. And they immediately zoom in on people and pet relationships, right? So you scratch, I sniff, you throw, I chase. You had a bad day, I fix it. You had a good day, I make it better. So this is very relatable for the pet owning public, right? And we finally get to, you pick me, I heart you. And right under that, we have the organization's logo. And we're able to kind of walk away from this marketing experience thinking really positively about the shelter itself, about shelter animals, about the fact that this is probably an organization that I would feel comfortable with, whether I'm coming to you as a donor or a adopter or a volunteer. No matter what my role is in the community, I'm getting really nice vibes, so to speak, from this piece. So the next kind of strategic point, if you remember back to our recipe for success, is really taking a moment and thinking about who our audience is. And I'll tell you that for most of us, the audience is everyone. But I want us to really take to heart what everyone means. It means previous adopters and current pet owners, and we're pretty good at speaking to that audience. They're kind of our choir, so to speak. So we're good at talking the talk with people who already understand what we know or who share that that same appeal to shelter pets. But I want you to also think about the potential that you have with first-time pet owners or people that are considering adoption for the first time. So maybe they've owned many pets in their life, but this is the first time that they're willing to consider or have been exposed to the idea of adopting a pet. And then, of course, there's people who aren't even there yet. And well, we don't have a ton of time today to do a deep dive on some of these concepts, but I do want to just point out that if in your efforts to market, you are leaving out some of these audience members, then we're falling short of our true potential and what marketing can really make happen for our organization. So this is also just one kind of last thing that I want to point out before we dive into some of the more fun stuff. But this data is a little bit older now. It's from several years ago. But at the time, the Humane Society of the United States and the Shelter Pet Project and the Ad Council had done some good research around how many people each year were going to get a new pet. And that number that they landed on was 29 million people a year were going to acquire a pet. But 17 million of them were undecided about where they would get that pet. At the same time that that's true, it's estimated that around 30% of animals living in homes were adopted from shelters or rescues. And so for me, marketing becomes the solution in this kind of math problem. So if we're able to just change the minds of, let's say, 1 million of those people, which collectively, if all of our shelters are kind of working on this problem, we should be able to do, right? And we're able to increase that percentage of animals who were gotten from a source of adoption just a tiny bit, then we're talking about eliminating euthanasia that happens just simply because of space in our country. So if we're able to really kind of communicate better with our constituents, with our audience, I think that's where the power to start to change some of these numbers comes in, because we're already doing such a good job of looking at things programmatically and really continuing to change the life-saving game from within the shelter. We also need to be able to reach into the community. And that's what I hope you kind of take away from this marketing conversation. So I also just want to quickly talk about our motivations for marketing. And this is another kind of piece of that puzzle that we talked about at the beginning, the recipe for success. But we all within the field of animal welfare share some common goals. We're trying to influence these behaviors within our community. We're trying to increase adoptions. We're trying to get more foster homes and more volunteers, more donations always, right? And we're also trying to influence pet ownership within our community, right? No matter what our mission is, most of us have programs that are external to our actual building and that reach out into the community to try to help people, whether it is spay neuter or pet food pantries or humane education programs. We're trying to influence the way that people think about animals so that maybe we are stemming the flow of animals into our organizations. But I also want you to take a moment, maybe, as I'm talking through the rest of these slides or when you have a moment after this, about what the specific needs for your location or your organization are as well. We all have something that's slightly more nuanced. So maybe within our community, we're also trying to, have a deeper level of conversation with the children in our community, or perhaps we are hoping to partner with other organizations to change some kind of behavior within the community. So think about how some of this is specific to your organization.